Billy Crystal's career was built on roasts and impressions. He even used blackface as music in 2012, which drew a lot of criticism. One celebrity, however, was unaffected by the entire issue. Many questioned why. Producers pushed him. Music authors pleaded for content. Every time, Crystal declined. Then cameras captured something that no one was intended to witness at the 1991 Oscars. Everything about music was explained in a time so raw. In a movie he devoted to this person in 2021, Crystal finally acknowledged the truth. The sorrow never went away. We now know why he was unable to make the joke. The world was already filled with music when Billy Crystal entered there. He was born in Manhattan's Doctors Hospital on March 14, 1948. Furthermore, the cacophony surrounding him wasn't just any noise. The music was jazz. It was tales. In real time, people were doing magic. The Commodore Music Store, a well-known location in New York City where jam sessions may burst out like a rainstorm, was run by his father, Jack Crystal. Stars would appear, including Gene Krupa and Billie Holiday. Billy was standing close enough to sense the change in the atmosphere when a legend intervened, while other children were still learning what the world was. He began to meet those jazz titans when he was 5 years old. The music continued to be played while he grew up in Long Beach, New York. It grew in size. Commodore Records, which is regarded as the first independent jazz label in the U.S., was established by his uncle Milt Gabler. He subsequently joined Decca Records. Billy was thus witnessing the creation of music rather than merely listening to it. When he was 7 years old, he saw Gabler create songs like Rock Around the Clock by Bill Haley. And he recognized the significance of names like Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. Those were not merely amusing anecdotes to be told later. They served as a kind of covert window into the inner workings of entertainment. Billy began imitating radio DJs to make folks laugh during family dinners. It was practice, but it was also fun. He had no idea that he was learning time. He was discovering how a voice might fill a space, and each relative's musical laugh served as a small cue that he should take action. Broadway then struck him hard and early. Billy got to see Guys and Dolls perform live with his family in 1955 when he was 7 years old. He didn't simply watch it and ignore it. Like a spark in his pocket, he brought it home. His older brothers Joel and Richard were humiliated when he performed an impromptu theatrical impression of composer Frank Loesser during a family dinner later. It also demonstrated something significant, though. He performed without fear of criticism from the audience. With more than 200 performances and several Tony Awards, the program was a huge success. Music, but for Billy, the simpler thing was more important. He felt alive as a result. That surge came from it. And even if you don't yet know the name, you begin pursuing it as soon as you have that feeling. However, even because you are talented, life does not remain gentle. Tragic events struck the family in 1963 when Joel, his 32-year-old cousin, passed away from cystic fibrosis. A young mind can be confused by sadness, and Billy was young. Thus, he carried out his pre-existing skills. He transformed the suffering into something he could mold. Not because he wanted to become famous, but because he needed a means to breathe again, he began to organize local talent music showcases. The room felt unexpectedly heavy, and he needed to find a way to lighten it. Later on, he would claim that comedy served as his protection. He learned that laughing can be a healing force from those shows. Not flawlessly, not permanently, but sufficient to get you through the night. After earning an associate's degree in drama from Nassau Community College in 1968, he continued to play anywhere he could. He used temple events as a training field. His imitation of Sammy Davis Jr. was one of his most notable routines. It garnered him recognition for its accuracy and earned him a $25 reward. However, it caused controversy since some individuals thought it went too far. He never forgot that moment. In retrospect, he acknowledged that it had taught him the value of tact and deference. The fact that the craft could make money, even in a tiny way, made that $25 significant. Then he decided to take a bigger chance. At the age of 20, he performed at the very end in Greenwich Village in 1968. It was a storied location that had been in operation since 1961 and was well known for performers like Joan Rivers and Bob Dylan. When Billy arrived, he performed a brief 10-minute music act about the dynamics of his Jewish family. The pushback of the room did not make him shrink. He was witty when he yelled at hecklers. It was genuine, yet unpolished. During that time, he was also establishing his life alongside his future wife, Janie Squire. They composed improvised duets for open mic evenings while he was a student at Hofstra University, and their joke about dating a silly girl from Philadelphia quickly became popular among the students. An audition for a Tonight Show pilot in Music, 1970 resulted from this momentum. And he found himself at a crossroads in 1970, following his graduation from New York University with a degree in drama. There was a steady job teaching. Comedy was the safer option, but he went with it. He opted for ambiguity. Outside of Carnegie Hall, he even buskied impressions. Although it sounds crazy, it fits him. He continued getting sharper because he was constantly attempting to use his own voice to gain the next stage. He enlisted in Long Island's THRE's company, an improv troupe, by 1972. Initially, a few pieces fell flat. Liza Minnelli's lisp elicited confusion and quiet. Silence like that can cause more pain than alcohol. Nevertheless, he persevered and reconstructed the act's music until it was a whole 15-minute routine. He then received $50 per show for his first paid gig, Music. Although the money was not flashy, it was a significant achievement. He was able to experiment in coffee shops and college settings during the 4 years that the unit ran, learning how to read a room that didn't always want to be read. Then, in 1973, an incident occurred that cemented his legacy. One of the patrons at a Catskills resort show began heckling while intoxicated. Billy quickly turned to improvisation, music, and performed a roast that imitated the speech impediment of Muhammad Ali. It nearly descended into a fight. Additionally, it solidified his character as a bold individual who could seize the opportunity and turn it into humor, even if it involved risk. He carried that music edge into television, where the stakes were considerably higher. At a time when LGBTQ+ visibility was virtually non-existent, he became one of the first recurrent gay characters on Prime Music Time TV in 1977 when he played Jody Dallas on Soap. It's serious, Danny. I am gay. Never give up, do you? In a sense that is difficult to comprehend today, it was both revolutionary and dangerous. There was a lot of anger after Jod thought about shifting in an episode that aired in 1978. Massive hate mail and death threats. Because of safety concerns, ABC increased security for his appearances and even canceled scheduled promotional activities. Imagine knowing that there is someone who wants you gone as you are bringing your script to work. He didn't give up, though. He bent closer. Later, he claimed that the threats inspired him to portray Jod as a fully fledged individual. He improvised about 40% of Jod's dialogue, which prevented the character from turning into a cartoon. Then, in 1979, a scene in which Jody married a drag queen caused controversy, music, to flare up once more. A 12-minute reduction to the episode was requested by network censors. Protests were started countrywide by conservative groups. A few stations declined to play it. Boycotts were a danger to advertisers. The noise was loud. It was untidy. Music, it was genuine. Even though several regions of the nation spoke out against it, the fame increased ratings and demonstrated that viewers could tolerate bold narrative despite all that fire. Nor did the pressure remain on the screen. Tension arose off-screen with Katherine Helmont, her co-star. He threatened to resign during a table read in 1978 because Jod didn't feel as genuine. Due to script changes. Both sides refused to compromise throughout the alleged 1-hour-long dispute. On-screen chemistry that was nominated for an Emmy, however, strangely reflected that same intensity. Furthermore, ratings increased by 20% in the weeks after that altercation. The season was more nuanced as a result of the producers rewriting important scenes to meet both performers where they stood. He was in the middle of a difficult lesson. In the room, standing up for a character's truth may cause you pain, but it may also alter what the audience sees. He continued to experience the usual pain of rejection even after that. He performed as Fernando Lamas on Saturday Night Live in 1980 following the conclusion of soap opera. The sketch was removed before it aired because Lorne Michaels felt it was too slick. Dilly felt devastated. The floor seemed to fall out, but he continued to work, move, and rewrite. The Fernando character gained popularity and became one of the show's most cherished recurrent impressions after a tweaked version debuted months later. His life continued to repeat that pattern. He finds a window when the door closes, even if he has to, music, construct it himself. Additionally, his private life was being put to the test while the public was responding. A conflict with Orthodox Jewish family resulted from his appearance on the serial opera. Some family members accused him of encouraging wrongdoing and humiliating the family, so they skipped Thanksgiving dinner in November 1978. Because it comes from the people who should be protected, that kind of rejection is deeply hurtful. He took that suffering with him and made it into stuff. He made a joke about coming out as gay in his 1981 stand-up special, but the joke was also a bruise, so the laugh had a dark undertone. Billy Crystal appeared on Saturday Night Live at an odd time. All Eddie Murphy had left was music. There was uncertainty about what would remain in the week show. Crystal then debuted a character named Fernando on Weekend Update in March 1984. Everything snapped as he leaned forward and stared directly at the camera, saying, "You look marvelous." At first, music felt modest, almost casual. The word quickly went viral. Fernando soon had his own skit, Fernando's Music Hideaway, where Crystal staged fictitious interviews with famous people like Music, Howard Cosell and Hulk Hogan. In front of up to 15 million spectators, there were no safety net or cue cards, just Crystal's quick thinking. Each appearance was alive and menacing. Fernando subtly stabilized SNL during a difficult period. And that one word had become a cultural, music, echo by the middle of the 1980s, appearing in everything from song parodies to late-night gags. However, Crystal's trip on Saturday Night Live nearly fell apart before it started. Morty the Mime, his first taped skit, was an odd and ambitious work that combined silent comedy with old Hollywood drama set in the African bush. It took too long, 6.5 minutes. Live sound effects, such as Don Partardo chewing potato chips to mimic footsteps, were used in the sketch. Morty was gone when the pilot aired, edited out entirely. Crystal was devastated, music. It was one of the most agonizing nights of music, his early career, he later remarked, and he almost immediately left the event. However, the producers were motivated to retain him on board by that disappointment, which resulted in a full-season contract and the subsequent breakout performance. Crystal had evolved from a performer by 1986. He was influencing the show's tone. He played several characters in drag, including Ronald Reagan, in the Rich Little Show parody that year. The sketch was dangerous and, music, sharp. People who watched complained. FCC complaints came in by the dozen. The comedy, however, was a hit. The writing earned Crystal his first Emmy, Music. It was a subdued affirmation that his gut feelings were correct, even when they caused discomfort to others. Tension increased backstage at the same, music, time. Overlapping impressions, particularly a Sammy Davis Jr. act, caused Crystal and Dana Carvey to argue. Crystal didn't want to share it. He desired total command. The disagreement became legendary among cast tales, serving as a reminder that SNL was about territory as much as humor. In 1985, his last sketch on Saturday Night Live felt liberating. The energy surged when Robin Williams, the guest host, music, joined him for a lengthy roast. Williams shot spontaneous lines at breakneck speed. He was beat for beat matched by Crystal. That didn't feel like a farewell. It seemed to be the beginning of something else. A lifelong connection that would influence both of their paths. Crystal's career took unexpected turns outside from SNL. He made his cinematic debut in 1978 with Rabbit Test, a surreal film in which he portrayed a man who falls pregnant following a botched scientific experiment. Music, reviewers detested the film, and moviegoers were stunned by it. Despite having a $1.5 million budget, it earned $4.7 million. It was peculiar, chaotic, and unforgettable. Additionally, it was the only time Joan Rivers directed a movie that was shot in music in just 21 days. Even during the notorious birth scene with the vacuum cleaner, Crystal pushed himself into the part fearlessly. Music, the film became a cult classic years later. It also had Michael Keaton's first movie part, just waiting to be discovered. In 1984, Crystal had another brief musical appearance as Morty the Mime in This Is Spinal Tap. He received a $500 bonus but was silent and unrecognized. However, one of the most memorable music scenes from the movie was his ostentatious posturing and silent derision of the band. He stole the show without saying a word. It was evidence that his timing was independent of dialogue. In 1986, Running Scared was released. Crystal portrayed a Chicago police officer under stress who abuses drugs. People were stunned. He performed his own stunts during a pursuit sequence, breaking his ankle in the process. Music. The production ceased. He recovered swiftly and returned to complete Music, the film, which went on to earn more than $8 million. On TV, the anguish persisted. The performance felt raw as a result. His willingness to suffer harm for the job was evident. Throw Mama from the Train allowed him to go even farther a year later. Crystal came up with more than 20 distinct murderous ideas while playing Larry Donner. Some stayed, while one used a chainsaw and was too violent, cutting. He was allowed to move freely by director Danny DeVito, and that freedom became the focal point of the movie. That's why the comedy felt alive. The Princess Bride almost lost him that year. Because of the severe allergic reaction and facial swelling induced by the Miracle Max prosthetic, producers thought about using Robin Williams in his place. Crystal continued to push. Almost everything was lived by him. Filming almost stopped because the cast laughed so much. Trying not to giggle, Mandy Patinkin damaged her rib. And used video accumulated for hours. The parts that survived became among of the movie's most quoted scenes. Next was Harry's encounter with Sally. Rob Reiner thought about Tom Hanks during the 1988 casting process. However, Crystal sounded like Reiner and entered the table flushed. Honest, anxious, recently divorced. There was an instant connection. During rehearsals, Crystal even contributed uncredited material and pushed limits to help shape the script behind the scenes. It required 65 takes for the deli scene. Ryan, I went all in. It was a tense room. Crystal thought the scene required one last push. It was an unplanned line that he suggested, I'll have what she's having. Everything was altered. The movie made $92 million and was nominated for 3 Oscars. In 1990, Crystal declined a sequel because she thought it would destroy the conclusion. Despite the fact that they are not planned, Billy Crystal has always trusted moments that feel true. For this reason, one of his most well-known, musical, moments was never recorded. There was no script for the quiet remark about finding your one thing in 1991's City Slickers. Life gave rise to it. Music, Crystal had once discussed growing older and feeling lost with Jack Palance late at night. Palance brought that burden into the set. As the camera rolled, he turned to face Crystal and uttered the words aloud. There is just one thing. If you stick to it, the rest is irrelevant. The group froze. It landed in the room with a certain vibe. Palance himself, with his own scars and hardships, was the source of the moment's strength, Crystal later acknowledged. Originally budgeted $17 million, the film has made over $130 million worldwide. The Oscar went to Palance. Years later, however, people are still talking about the scenario because it seems like someone unexpectedly tells you the truth. Crystal carried that desire for the truth with him into all of his subsequent actions. When he directed his debut movie, Mr. Saturday Night, in 1992, he chose to portray Buddy Young Jr. from the age of 30 to 80. He turned down shortcuts. There were layers of prosthesis every day. Even getting him ready could take up to 12 hours at times. His skin turned red. Infections ensued. He joked that the weight of his head, music, was 9 pounds. The team saw him struggle through scenes, weary and in pain, yet he never gave up. The makeup team went beyond what other movies at the time dared to do with effects. Because of how authentic his metamorphosis felt, the movie won praise. It also demonstrated the extent to which Crystal would go in order to make a character feel sincere. That same intuition led to the 1995 film Forget Paris. The narrative was inspired by his own honeymoon mishaps, such as misplacing his wallet in 1970. He continuously changing situations to reflect reality. He insisted on reshoots. These decisions increased the studio's budget to $30 million by an additional $3 million for music. Crystal was indifferent. He desired a lived-in atmosphere in Paris. He preferred a messy, rather than a miraculous, marriage. To bolster his position as a basketball referee, he even brought in actual NBA players like David Robinson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The film's emphasis on what transpires after the romance wanes made it unique. It was personal because it took chances. When this was analyzed in 1999, Crystal was still searching for something more profound than amusement. He and Robert De Niro attended actual therapy in order to create the peculiar bond between a mob leader and a therapist. These weren't practice runs. They were dialogues. De Niro revealed anxieties he didn't usually express. For 2 weeks, filming was halted. No one voiced any complaints. On the screen was what emerged from those meetings. Globally, the film earned more than $16 million. Furthermore, it demonstrated how genuine feeling might transform comedy into something enduring. He was pushed to the limit by animation as well. In 2001, Crystal spent around 300 sessions recording the voice of Mike Wazowski for Monsters Incorporated. He cried out. He raised his voice. Music, he overreached himself. His voice cords gave way. He was cautioned by a doctor to quit or face irreversible harm. To keep his performance fluid, Pixar had to digitally fix some of the music in it. Globally, the movie brought in about $562 million. Mike became iconic. Few people were aware of the price his body endured for his voice. There was also the test of hosting the Oscars. Music, Crystal took the stage without any safety net in 1990, when she was merely 41 years old. He trusted his gut, his senses, and his quickness. He made 15 impersonations in his introductory monologue. The audience laughed for music 8 minutes in a row when he made fun of Tom Cruise from Top Gun. Cruise played along while sitting there. That night was a game changer. It started a run that would see Crystal host music, the Oscars 9 times, more than nearly anyone in the contemporary period. However, there was a risk associated with those phases. During a comedy for Midnight in Paris in 2012, music, Crystal used blackface to impersonate Sammy Davis Jr. The criticism came quickly. In a matter of hours, over 5,000 complaints flooded social media. It was referred to by critics as a return to what ought to have remained hidden. Junior daughter Sammy Davis stood up for Crystal, claiming that her father would have been on board. But the moment was a change. The rules of comedy had altered. It struck Crystal. On The View in 2013, he acknowledged that the line was tone-deaf. Comedy has turned into a minefield, he claimed. His chances of hosting the Oscars again were probably lost because of his candor. People frequently overlook Crystal's intense concern for those in his immediate vicinity. When Robin Williams broke character during an emotional, unscripted moment at the 1991 Oscars, Crystal filled in without any prior preparation. He stabilized the space. His friend was grounded by music. Williams later claimed that during a terrible time of addiction, that moment, snorts, kept him sane. Their relationship was strong. In 2014, Williams' music passed away, shattering Crystal in a silent manner that never fully recovered. The work continued. In the English version of Howl's Moving Castle, he provided the voice of Calcifer in 2004. John Lasseter trusted Crystal and allowed him to record scenes in long, energetic takes, despite Studio Ghibli's initial concerns about the style. A year later, Crystal's longtime manager filed a lawsuit against him for unpaid residuals. His finances and reputation were at risk due to the claim. He reached an out-of-court settlement for about $1 million. Even legends need to pay attention to the fine print, as this served as a reminder. Crystal battled for Mike Wazowski's soul when Monsters University debuted in 2013. A 3-minute music segment of Mike pouting in self-doubt was cut by Pixar. Crystal retreated. Fans, he claimed, needed to see that side. Weeks of discussion led to the scene's restoration. The decision was later praised by critics. The character gained weight because of vulnerability. With his life in his music hands, Crystal took the stage on Broadway by himself in 2014. 700 Sundays told his story through family photos and recollections. Billy's father, Jack, who passed away unexpectedly in 1963 at the age of 15, was at its core. Audiences wept and fell silent during the eulogy scene. The program took home a Tony Award. It brought in about $15 million and sold out. It demonstrated Crystal's versatility as a comedian. He was a skilled storyteller who could reveal the inside of old wounds. He carried that sorrow with him into 2021. He portrayed a loss-shaped widowed writer. The movie reflected his own grief over Robin Williams. Writing letters that would never be sent was one of the scenes. Those were too close words on set. During the shoot, Tiffany had to shed tears. Williams kept his final voicemail for years, Crystal acknowledged when she dedicated the movie to him. Family never left each other. He proposed to Janice Goldfinger at a drive-in back in 1967, and they were married on June 4, 1970. The marriage almost ended in 1973. Distance in touring nearly ended it. Rather, an Elvis impersonator officiated their 1975 renewal of vows in Las Vegas. It was that weird music night that saved them. They stayed together for over 54 years. He was also molded by his daughters. In 2003, Jennifer directed a documentary that revealed a traumatic family history connected to the Holocaust. Crystal had been avoiding stories for decades, but watching it made him face them. Later, in 2010, when Crystal was experiencing burnout, Lindsay led a family intervention. Like his father, he feared dying young. Therapy transformed him. His pace slowed. Crystal acknowledged in December 2024 that he had aged 10 years as a result of hosting the Oscars. For health reasons, he declined the 2025 ceremony. He had a net worth of almost $60 million. The legacy was never defined by money, though. A quieter thing is what's left. A man who repeatedly discovered that what matters most is what remains with you after the spotlight fades, who trusted genuine moments, and who pursued truth even when it caused pain.